At some point in your life, particularly in the midst of a depressive episode or a period of heightened anxiety, you have probably been commanded to change your emotions. And this sounds like cheer up, choose happiness, calm down, just relax, or general statements kind of like that. I do believe that for the most part, these are probably well intentioned, although ignorant statements. And if you're anything like me, they tend to make you really, really irritated, frustrated, and not real happy with the person who said them. I think they create this reaction in me for a variety of reasons, but two really come to mind prominently. One is that they are invalidating. They are essentially telling us to command our emotions to simply disappear or change into something else. And not only is that very dismissive and essentially a person just saying, like, hey, the way you feel is not correct, it is not appropriate, it is not reasonable given the current situation. I think the thing I have an even bigger problem with is that it's not an actionable statement. When people tell you to feel an emotion that is different than the emotion you currently feel, they are describing an outcome that they are hoping you will be able to achieve and not a process that you can actually engage in. Human beings do not have the ability to selectively experience certain emotional states. We don't have this like wheel in our brains that we can just rotate to happiness or satisfaction or peace. There is no direct mechanism for selecting an emotional state or response. It's literally not a thing that we can do. There are things that seem like they would force us to experience a certain emotion, but they actually often backfire and make things worse. For example, if you're in the midst of feeling depressed and you know you'd like to experience happiness or contentment or joy, you might try to make yourself think about something that you know in the past has been a source of those emotions. So, say I'm in the midst of some depressive feelings and I realize it and I don't like it. And I try to force myself to think about my children, which my children in general, on a daily basis, do create positive emotions in me, mostly feelings of happiness. But when I'm in a depressive state, for example, and I try to contradict the depressive state by thinking about my kids, it lasts for like a millisecond. And then my brain will just instantly twist it into something just incredibly dark and awful, like, yeah, but they could die. Or what about when they become teenagers and they hate you and then it's all ruined? And my brain can make anything negative. Like literally anything. You can throw anything you want at me. You can tell me the best thing you can think of. You can put me in the best possible situation you can think of. And if I'm in a certain state of mind, I will find a way to make it terrible. It's almost like the world's worst superpower. I think I'm probably not alone in that. I think most people who deal with any type of mental illness have a mindset, not an intentional selective mindset, but more just like a mental habit or pattern or kind of built-in tendency to be able to subconsciously and automatically highlight and extract the absolute worst components of an experience or a memory or a thought about the future. And so trying to, think happy thoughts, it is a completely ineffective mechanism that at best will do nothing and at worst will backfire and give you one more thing to be sad about or be angry about or be stressed about. This is just my personal theory, and I'm not even sure with where brain imaging technology is right now. I'm not even sure that this is a testable hypothesis. And I'd be really curious to hear what you guys think about it. But I think that when we are in a certain emotional state, typically an emotional state that is full of unpleasantness, again, depression, anxiety, anger, sadness, hopelessness, despair, things that don't feel good to feel. And we try to essentially brute force the opposite emotional reaction. I'm sad, I want to be happy. I'm nervous, I want to be calm. And we try to just conjure up something in our minds that is meant to provoke the opposite emotional reaction. I think that it actually creates sort of like a defiant pattern in our brains because when we're upset about something, even if it's something like really unlikely. Let's say something about the future that you're worried might happen, and you know this is a statistically unlikely event. Like you logically understand this probably won't happen, but it's gripping your heart and you just can't let go of it. And you try to make yourself let go of it by thinking about the most opposite type of scenario that you can imagine. Think what it does is it actually creates an increased internal sense of panic because you're still worried about the thing, right? You haven't disproven it. You haven't taken that minuscule chance that this horrible thing could happen and made it zero. And so you still feel worried about it, but now you also feel misunderstood or ignored or invalidated because I still have this fear. And whether it's someone else saying it to you or you saying it to yourself, not only do I still worry about this, not only am I still concerned about this, no one around me gets it. And everyone around me thinks this is nothing, thinks everything is fine. And so I think it's a subconscious reaction, but I think that unpleasant feeling actually tends to expand and get even bigger and stronger and digs its heels in more when we try to just force it out with an opposite thought or an opposite experience. And it's just not a strategy I've had a lot of success with. So, super awesome pep talk, right? Full of hope, full of optimism. Probably at this point sounds like I'm saying that when you're in any kind of bad or unpleasant mood, you're just screwed and you just need to accept it and there's nothing you can do about it. That, of course, is not the case. But I do just want to highlight we don't have direct control over our emotions. And when people suggest to you that you should exercise direct control over your emotions, or if you suggest it to yourself, you are essentially saying nothing. That's not a functional strategy that we have, you know. It would be like telling someone who has a broken arm, like, well, make the pain stop. How? There's not an actual thing you can do to create that outcome, just instantly and directly. However, while we do not have direct control over our emotional states, we do have influence over our emotional states. So if you go back to the video I did on radical acceptance and the trichotomy of control, there's things we have pretty much direct, immediate control over. There's things we very clearly have like little to no control over. And then there's some stuff that kind of falls in the middle where it's like we are one of several moving pieces that's going to create or change this outcome. Our own emotional state falls into that middle category. We're not irrelevant. We don't have to just accept every feeling that comes our way and say, I'm just going to feel this way until my brain decides to tell me to feel something different. The way I like to think of it is think of your emotional state, the feelings you feel in a day, as being like the end product on an assembly line. Because there are a lot of factors that go in to the emotions we experience at any given time. We have control over some, but not all, of the factors that eventually create this end of the line emotion. So if you think about your ability to feel happy, for example, it's probably dependent upon a lot of things, some of which you very clearly cannot control. So some of the steps on this assembly line would be things like the state of the world in general, which you very clearly cannot control, and I think very clearly is not super fantastic at the moment. You don't control what other people do. And yet, other people, especially the people who are close to you, absolutely have an impact on your emotions and the feelings you feel in a day. You are impacted by their choices, you're impacted by their emotions, you're impacted by their health. There's all kinds of things that other people do that you cannot fully insulate yourself from unless you shut yourself off from those people entirely, which is not always a good choice. And even if you do that, sometimes you still care enough about them that no matter how high you put those walls up, they still affect you. You can't control the weather, and the weather can affect our moods. It is rainy and windy today, and it was absolutely gorgeous over the weekend. And so I am kind of bummed out about the weather. There's nothing I can do about that. I can't go out there and part the clouds and make the sun come out. It is what it's going to be. But there are things that I can do that increase the likelihood of me experiencing certain emotional states that I find pleasant and desirable. For example, although I cannot make myself be happy, I can make myself exercise. And I know that on days when I exercise, I am more likely to experience happiness because exercise makes me happy. I cannot directly make myself calm or relaxed, but I do have control over whether or not I go outside on any given day. And I know that on days when I go outside, I am more likely to experience a feeling of calm and a feeling of relaxation because I love being outside. I cannot directly control if I feel accomplished in a day, but I can control whether or not I record a YouTube video that I hope will help people. And on days when I have recorded a YouTube video that I hope will help people, I am more likely to feel accomplished at the end of the day. That's basically what it comes down to with your emotional state, is it's an odds game. You don't have direct control over the end product, but you do have control over a lot of behaviors and thoughts and other factors that occur during your day that increase the odds of you experiencing the emotions that you want to experience. And if you put as many of those variables as possible in your favor, you can get your life to a point where you are more likely to experience pleasant than unpleasant emotions on an average daily basis. That is the highest level of control that we have over our feelings. And if you're able to consistently and routinely exert control over those variables, you are doing everything that you can for your emotional health. And on days when you still don't feel the way you want to feel, and they will still happen, no matter how well you do these things, they will still happen. And I think that's probably true for all people, but it's like double true if you have depression or if you have anxiety, because it means sometimes your brain's just not going to cooperate, right? It means sometimes everything can be fine and you cannot feel fine. That's by definition some of what those conditions entail. So you have even a little bit less control over your emotions than most people, and most people don't have that much to begin with. Like, it's just not something that we get to choose. Also, don't forget that you control some of the behaviors or some of the choices you might make during the day that might tend to sabotage or counteract or reduce the odds of feeling a pleasant emotion by the end of the day. Going back to achievement or accomplishment, for example. Yes, I can choose to do certain things that increase the odds of me feeling that way. I can also choose not to do certain things that decrease the odds of me feeling that way. For example, I know that if I spend too much time on my phone, and I still have not figured out exactly what too much time is for me. I don't know the exact number, but I know that when I feel like I've spent an excessive amount of time on my phone in a day, especially if it was kind of like fruitless time, like just scrolling stuff, I just feel kind of gross by the end of the day. Like it's just like an icky skin crawling type feeling. Like just I just didn't do what I wanted to do today. And so it's also important sometimes to not engage in certain behaviors that decrease the likelihood of you being able to experience desired emotions. But at the end of the day, what it really is it's an odds game. So when people suggest that you have a level of direct control over your emotions that you now know, you probably knew it before this video, but maybe I've just been able to articulate a little bit more about why. You know that you don't have the ability to do that. Therefore, do not feel bad when you can't do it because it's not a real thing. It's not a human, there's not a mechanism in your brain that would allow you to do the thing they're telling you to do. But don't swing so far to the other side in defiance or in hopelessness that you decide, I have no say in how I feel. It's just going to be whatever it's going to be. And I'm just going to throw my hands up in the air and give up and feel however life tells me to feel on any given day. No, don't do that either. That's just as inaccurate. You have influence. And what I hope you will do is exert that influence to the best of your ability every day. Put the odds as far in your favor as they possibly can be, well knowing that you may do everything right and still have days where you just don't feel it. And when those days happen, please know that I understand. I have them too. I don't like them. They happen. And it's not necessarily your fault. If you feel like you did what you needed to do, I hope you can still feel good about that, even if it doesn't produce the desired outcome, because sometimes it won't. I hope this is helpful. Take care, and I'll see you next time.